I am so thrilled to be able to bring you this sermon today. Thank you for joining me. This is Mike Adams, and today we're going to break the spell, the sorcerer's spell, over economics, money, finance, what are assets, what is debt, and so on, because this is one of many sermons I'll be sharing with you about what I call God's economy. And God's economy is very different from man's economy. And when I say man, I mean mankind, the synthetic world created by man, often in contradiction to the principles of God. For example, one of the most powerful realizations that we can come to is understanding that man's economy is based on scarcity of resources, and it's based on who loses versus who wins. So one person takes resources, another person loses those resources. Scarcity is built into the system, and you're taught that you can never have enough, and you can spend your entire life trying to accumulate or achieve instruments that are called assets, but are really actually representations of debt. Whereas in God's economy, it's based on limitless abundance rather than artificial scarcity. And by limitless abundance, let me give you an example. If you want to create medicine and you want to create it for virtually free, what can you do? Well, one simple thing is you can sprout seeds. You can sprout broccoli seeds, for example. And broccoli seeds will, by the miracles of Mother Nature granted by God, they will synthesize a medicinal molecule called sulforaphane, which is anti-cancer, it's neuroprotective, it's cardioprotective. It's one of the most amazing nutrients found in foods and in sprouts. And God gives it to you for free. And God gives it in unlimited abundance. It's not like there is a deposit of sulforaphane somewhere in the world that you have to mine out of the ground, and countries are fighting over their territory for the sulforaphane mines. And there's wars over the access to the sulforaphane mines, and then there's legal battles involved in who owns the land of the sulforaphane mines. No, what God says is you can all have sulforaphane. All you have to do is add water to seeds, and we, Mother Nature and God, we will create it for you in unlimited quantities, as much as you want, as often as you want. You will have unlimited abundance. You can grow your own medicine. Or, I mean, you can acquire it. You can also purchase it at a grocery store if you want to purchase broccoli, or you can purchase broccoli sprouts, or you can purchase superfoods or supplements with broccoli sprouts. I mean, yes, but you can also grow it for free. So that's just one example, but I'm here to tell you that most of the education or the programming that we have been subjected to our entire lives, especially those of you who have been in business or business schools, you have an MBA or you have an accounting degree, you have been subjected to an artificial terminology, an artificial reality where you think dollars are assets. But what we know, those of us who are rooted in truth and righteousness, we know that dollars are created as debt instruments. The moment any dollar is created, well, it's created by the Federal Reserve, essentially, and then loaned to the Treasury in exchange for IOUs. In other words, dollars are debt from the moment they are created. The Treasury of the United States government owes those dollars to a private globalist banking cartel known as the Federal Reserve. It is created in debt. And then when you acquire dollars, and you think, oh, I'm building assets, and you deposit dollars in the bank, and you check your bank account login, and you look at the numbers on the screen, whoopee, I've got more dollars. The dollars are rolling in, and you think you're rich. No, all those dollars represent debt. That's no wealth at all. And this brings us to Proverbs chapter 10, verse 22, the wisdom of King Solomon, who says, the blessing of the Lord makes one rich. You see? And that's actually the only verse I need to cite today. The blessing of the Lord makes one rich. Or you could say in plural, the blessings of the Lord, because there are many, many blessings. But one of them is to simply have the favor of the Lord. And that is earned through action. It's earned through integrity. It's earned through many, many ways. Many of them are talked about in Proverbs. But one of those is giving to others and not being someone who blocks wealth or material goods, but rather someone who distributes them and helps others in need and becomes a conduit of the movement of resources through your hands into the hands of others who are aided by that effort. And I've talked about that before a little bit in the previous sermon, by the way, and I will talk about that again. But understand, most importantly, what man's economy defines as assets are not assets in the eyes of the Lord. You can acquire all kinds of dollars, and you can acquire all kinds of material goods that you have purchased with those dollars, which are debt instruments. And then you can even leverage those dollars and you can make a down payment on something where you have more debt, like a car. So you walk in with debt instruments, dollars, to make a down payment, to have even more debt, to make even more payments on a car that's losing value from the moment that you, quote, purchase it. And all you've done here is you've engaged in man's economy of a debt rat race, and you have done nothing good in the eyes of the Lord in those transactions. Now, if you were to stop and assist somebody who needed help, somebody's got a flat tire on the side of the road, and if you can safely stop and help them, or one time there was a truck, like a lowrider white pickup truck full of like Mexican guys I saw them at a gas station right next to an air pump, and they had a flat tire, and the air pump clearly didn't work. So I got out of my vehicle and I said, told them, do you need some help? I've got an air pump, because I carry a big battery-powered inflation pump with me in my vehicle at all times. And I think I said in Espanol, necesita ayuda, and they were really, really shocked and surprised. Like, here's this kind of cowboy-looking white guy asking us if we need help. Like, in their world, that has perhaps not happened very frequently. I don't know. And they said, sí. And so I brought over the pump. How do you say that in Spanish? La bomba aire, the air pump for the car tires. I didn't remember how to say car tires. I haven't used Spanish enough recently. But I brought it over and connected the pump, and wouldn't you know it, it did not work. It did not work because that tire in their truck had a valve stem problem. And so we did not get their tire inflated. However, the intention was to help these people get their tire inflated and get them back on the road. And they saw the intention. And so something happened there. Even though their tire was not inflated, relations between, a white guy like myself, a white Texan, well, technically I'm Afro-Irish Native American, but I look white. So, a white Texan, the relations with Spanish-speaking, Hispanic people, that relationship got inflated or improved, even though the tire did not get inflated. So, through God's ways, sometimes you are fixing a problem that's different from the one that you see right in front of you. On that day, I'm sure those young men went home to their families or their wives and said, I got this crazy story. This white guy just stopped and wanted to help us. And they're like, no way. So who knows? But that's the point, is now that earns you God's favor. That is currency in the eyes of God. But just buying a new truck and using instruments of debt in order to acquire material wealth, that earns you nothing in God's eyes. Now, this kind of transactional sorcery gets even crazier when you think about purchasing toxic pharmaceutical medicines using dollar debt instruments, which are also counterfeit money. It's not real money because it doesn't hold value. It's counterfeit because the government is printing it constantly. And did you know that the United States of America right now has just crossed the threshold of $35 trillion in national debt? And if you include the unfunded liabilities that it owes to the people over time, that number becomes nearly $200 trillion, completely unpayable, will never be paid. which means the currency will eventually collapse. It means this whole debt-based system, or man's economy, is an economy rooted in fraud, and it is an economy that will end in catastrophic collapse. But even before the collapse, a lot of people, they want to go to a pharmacy and purchase toxic prescription medications that harm them. And I'm not saying that all medications harm everybody all the time. I understand the need for insulin for those who are in advanced stage diabetes, for example. Or I understand the need for painkillers among veterans, for example, who've been wounded in war. Yes, there are cases where prescription medications serve a purpose. And there are also off-label medications, such as ivermectin, that I endorse and I routinely use myself because they're so effective. And by the way, ivermectin came from soil microbes. So the actual original invention of ivermectin is an expression of God's creation. It came from nature, not from man. And that's also a big difference. A lot of the synthetic man-made pharmaceuticals are incredibly toxic, but sometimes the pharmaceutical industry will copy or steal a molecule from nature, like they did with ivermectin, and then they will claim then it's a prescription medication that they invented, but actually God invented it. And that's one of the reasons ivermectin is so safe and so effective, because it actually came from nature. But anyway, the typical person today, they go to the pharmacy and they trade debt-based dollars for poison-based medicines. Think about how crazy that is. You drive up to a pharmacy, like, here, I'll trade you debt instruments for your poison instruments. And then I'll swallow the poison and get sicker. Because that's what happens to most people who take most of the pharmaceuticals. They get worse. If you take diabetes drugs, it doesn't solve diabetes. You have to stay on those drugs, and it has side effects. Or if you take, cancer chemotherapy, it's killing you. Muscles wasting away, hair falling out, losing weight, nauseated constantly, have no energy. And it's because it's poison. This is not a mystery. It's poison. So people will spend debt instruments to buy poison. Whereas if you shift over to God's economy, and you use the example of, let's say, growing medicinal herbs or medicinal foods yourself, then all you have to expend is time and effort. And in return, you don't get poisons, you get blessings. The blessings of God that's mentioned in Proverbs 10, the blessings of God. And you can get them in unlimited quantities as long as you're willing to put in whatever required effort to plant them, to grow them, to harvest them, to cultivate. But you don't have to pay a royalty to God for the molecule that's in the food. For example, if you grow red grapes contain an amazing molecule called resveratrol. It's also found in the grape leaves, by the way. And resveratrol is produced by the grape plant in response to an attack by fungi. So when the grape plant is attacked by molds, fungi, or fungal spores, it produces resveratrol as a defensive mechanism, which is why if you spray grapes with man's fungicides, synthetic chemicals, you deprive the plant of its natural cycle of producing resveratrol. And that's why grapes that are treated with pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, they lack the nutritional density of grapes produced organically, or grapes that you produce yourself, which are a lot more nutritionally dense. But if you want to grow grapes, you can grow an unlimited quantity of grapes. You can graft the grapes, or you can clone the grapes, or whatever propagation method works best for your grapes. And you notice that when you graft a plant or clone a plant or harvest